Think Facebook's going to cut me off this time, Drew?
More than likely, yes.
Welcome into Sports Around the Bar, your favorite sports talk show, I'm sure. As always, I'm Jake, your bartender, and I'm joined over the phone, respecting the social distancing, by my co-host, Drew. Drew, man, thanks for taking another one for the team and calling in on this one.
Yeah, man, it's kind of nice. It's a lot of quietness in my house.
Yeah, you don't have me coming over here yelling about how the Titans are better than the Chiefs, right?
Right. That was definitely the most noise in the house was you and your Titans talk.
Well, you're welcome for the break. You know, it only took global pandemic for you to get it, but you're welcome for it. Welcome in, guys. You're welcome as well. Today we are talking about AFC free agency grades. We talked about it. We're like, we never get through the entire NFL every time we try to do this because we want to talk with you about everything going on. So we decided to split it. We're going to try to do 16 tonight and 16 again on Thursday. Drew, are we actually going to get it done this time?
I would believe so. Yeah, I think we're going to get through.
Welcome in, guys. You're welcome as well. Today we turn that off because, yeah. All right. Sorry about that.
It's okay. I'm still not getting my feet. Oh, there it is. I got it now. Cool. Now, we should be able to get through it all, man. I don't see why we shouldn't. Hey, Ryan, good to see you, man. He said top fan first. Nice, man.
Well, we're glad you're here, and we're glad Drew can see you because I can't. So, end of the world starts with Facebook not working. Oh, wait, just kidding. It didn't do that when everything was fine, too. Welcome into the show, though. Again, Drew, we're going to start in the AFC North. We're going to work our way through the East, and then we're going to go South, and finally we'll get out West. I figured the Chiefs won it this time so they can wait their turn. As for everything else, is there anything you want to talk about before we get into it?
No, man, I'm ready. I'm ready to roll.
All right, let's do it. Let's start with the Ravens, Drew, because this list, again, when you're talking about the guys coming in, retaining Matthew Judon, Calais Campbell on the trade, bring in Justin Ellis, or re-signing Justin Ellis, I should say, Derek Wolfe coming in, Michael Brockers coming in. All really they've lost is Chris Wormley and Hayden Hurst here, and Hurst they traded away, Wormley they traded away. Those are the big players on the way out of Baltimore, and they're getting picks in return here. What kind of grade would you give the Ravens?
Man, I like this a lot. I think they're focusing on the right part of their team. It's got to be an A for me. I can't imagine any other grade but an A for the Baltimore Ravens. They seem to do it year in and year out.
Yeah, for me it's an A+. And really the reason I want to go into this is the Calais Campbell trade I think was the big one. The Hayden Hurst trade I liked as well, and the Wormley getting a 7th-round pick out of a division rival I think is also fantastic for them. But really, when you're talking about bringing in a Pro Bowl kind of D-tackle like Calais Campbell, when they struggled last year to get pressure on the quarterback organically, they did it, but they did a lot of it through blitzing. When you struggle with that, and then you bring in a guy like Calais Campbell who can make an influence on the pass game, great at generating sacks, especially from the interior, it's a win-win, and they gave up a 5th-round pick to make it happen.
Yeah, no, this is definitely a huge win for them. You did say blocker. I believe he failed his physical, or something happened, and that did not go through. So unless I am not up to date, I don't believe the Ravens have blocker on their roster.
Well, I'm guessing they'll probably work something out contract-wise. I hadn't seen that, but even still, I am expecting Brockers to probably be on this team. I really don't think they walk away from it, because when you look at the reason why they've buffed up all these defensive line free agents, it's pretty simple, right? They got to that AFC divisional round game against the Titans, and they really didn't have any answers. The cracks were showing beforehand, during the year where they weren't able to really get after the quarterback. They did have some showing out of Judon, but for the most part, they didn't have organic pass rush where we can send 4 guys, we can send 3 guys, we can send maybe even up to 5 and get to the quarterback. They blitzed more than any other team in football last year because the guys up front simply weren't good enough. They've addressed that, Drew. They brought in Derek Wolfe. Eventually, I think Brockers will be there, who will be a great support and kind of rotational piece. They have Calais Campbell and Judon returning as well. This, to me, is the best free agency that I've seen for the AFC side. And I know that's a bit of a spoiler here. Trading Hayden Hurst and getting a 2nd-round pick, obscene for a 27-year-old tight end that's only been in the league a couple of years. To me, I look at that move and I was like, that's brilliant. There's no way they should have been able to recoup that, but they managed to find a team in the Falcons that were so needy for a cheap tight end on that rookie contract that they were able to move him off.
Yeah, no, that's a great way of putting the cherry on the top of this free agency. I mean, I love the motors that they got on everyone. Obviously, they already kind of know Matt Judon and what he can do, but when you bring in someone like Campbell and Wolfe, I mean, these guys just have relentless motors, which it just totally fits the Baltimore's defensive scheme completely. It's almost like they're cheating. It's almost like they're cheating.
Yeah, I was going to say the rich only get richer this free agency. What do you think about Wormley going to the Steelers? Is that how big of a deal is that? Because he was statistically, if you like a lot of the higher end analytic guys' takes on things, he was the best defensive lineman for the Ravens last year, at least interior wise. Now he's on his way to a division rival in the Steelers, but only recouping a 7th round pick. Should that trade not have happened?
I don't know all the behind-the-scenes stuff, man. I mean, it seems ridiculous when you trade him off for a 7th-round pick, and especially in division. That's a little questionable for me. But, maybe he was asking his way out, and they knew they weren't going to gain anything for him, and they were just going to get what they could.
Yeah, and even though it's in division, like I said, I wouldn't want to see a guy like that twice a year. It is still a pick where normally you'd be cutting him, and instead they were managed to move his money off the books, not take any dead cap, and actually get a draft pick and a new player because of it. I like it. Ravens are an A+. It has to be.
Yeah, mine's an A. They're really close to an A+. I'd like them to focus a little bit on maybe getting a veteran in there at the receiving core, but I guess they're just going to wait to the draft.
Absolutely. Let's move on to talk about the Steelers next, if you're ready, because this one, again, a little hard to grade compared to the Ravens and a lot of other teams because they didn't have a whole lot of money to spend. They were a team going into free agency that was absolutely broke. They knew they had to be smart with their moves. That's why when their top free agent is both Steve Wisniewski and I guess you could say maybe even Derek Watt, a fullback, it's hard to be too down on a team that just didn't have any money to spend.
I do like the addition of Eric Ebron, and obviously keeping Bud Dupree there was a must. But you got to remember, a lot of their free agent moves were in the middle of last season. Bringing in Mitt Fitzpatrick, if I could talk. Holy cow. I like this, man. I'm not huge on it, obviously, with the Ravens. Maybe a B-. I think they did the right thing. It wasn't a lot, but what they had, like you said, cap space, a B- seems pretty relevant for this free agency for them.
I'm also going B-. And again, when you're talking about bringing in a guy like Wisniewski, who, even though he didn't play a lot for the Chiefs, when he did come in, he was relatively efficient, had a great postseason, earned him this contract, but they still brought him in relatively cheap. You also kept Ebron coming in basically. This, to me, might have been one of the best tight end deals. When you look at what the Browns had to go and pay for Austin Hooper, to get Ebron on a 2-year deal that cheap, I think is absolutely fantastic for the Steelers. Now they're going to have maybe their first legitimate tight end since Heath Miller, right?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, if he can't catch passes from Big Ben, then there's something wrong with Eric Ebron.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's just plain and simple.
Now, they did lose Javon Hargrave. I think that's a bit of a loss on his way out to Philadelphia. Tyler Matakevich also on his way out to Buffalo. They've lost some pieces, but I still think this defense is going to be in pretty good shape. I think they're going to be maybe not quite as good as we saw last year defensively, but I think hopefully with Big Ben coming back, the offense looks better, and this could be a playoff team, especially now that there's 7 spots to get to.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think, again, they focused on what they need to, and one of their biggest offseason moves was the middle of last year.
And Will says we should do call-in from listeners. We do have it planned, but unfortunately Drew is soaking up the only line we have. So maybe as soon as we can get back in studio or back in the bar and we can actually make calls or take calls from other people, we will consider it and try to find a way to work it in there. It's just right now we're dealing with what we got, unfortunately.
Yep. But the technology's there. Just not the we're just not going to risk it, man. It's where we're at right now. COVID-19 is definitely a hot spot.
Absolutely. Any final thoughts on the Steelers? Is there any way this team gets better than what we've already seen out of free agency, or do you think the money's all gone and it just is what it is at this point?
I think this draft is littered with talent. So as far as free agents go, no, I think they're done, but I think they're ready for this draft. Ryan says, let's talk about the Chiefs cap situation. We'll get to it, man. It's a little laughable, but I had to say that. That was pretty funny.
I think I got more money to spend than the Chiefs do at this point, Drew. Not by much, but I do. I've probably got, $120? Something like that? I'll have to check the bank account. Let's talk about the Browns next. Big spenders. Obviously, you got guys like Jack Conklin and Austin Hooper coming in. They brought in Case Keenum on a trade. A couple lesser-known guys, too, with Andrew Billings and Kevin Johnson. Maybe not household names, but very solid players as well, coming in to Cleveland. But they do have some losses on top of it. Losing a young linebacker like Joe Schobert hurts. They lost a long-time staple in their linebacking room in Christian Kirksey. They also lost guys like Justin Burris, Eric Murray. How would you grade a team like Cleveland that has spent high and brought in a lot of high-dollar free agents, but has also lost some high-dollar free agents as well?
Oh, this one's a tough for me, man. I mean, I like the additions of like Cooper. I like keeping Kareem Hunt there. You know, Jack Conklin obviously was a huge signing as well. But what's weird about the Cleveland is like they're willing to let go of pieces to focus on another spot in their team, but they weaken that one spot they let go, like their linebacking core. Bringing someone like Goodson is not going to fill the spot of those two linebackers. I give this a C. I want to give it more because I like Conklin and I like Hooper, but I don't like the fact they're depleting their linebacking core in other spots.
I got to say, I gave him a C+, and I thought I was being hard on him because they did land some high-dollar, talented free agents, right? Austin Hooper coming in, we think he'll be great working behind guys in Kevin Stefanski's offense that utilizes two tight ends, working with Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry on the field. I think he's going to have a lot of success in Cleveland. But outside of him, I think there's problems with some of these other signings. I mean, I like Andrew Billings coming in. I shouldn't say that. Kevin Johnson coming in on a $3.5 million prove-it deal I think is fine from Buffalo. Maybe not the best in the world, but it's okay. My problem is the Jack Conklin contract. And again, they front-loaded so much money on this, and he's already come out and said he is planning on focusing on getting a new contract as soon as the new CBA becomes official and we start moving into the higher dollar earnings. They paid him $20 million of this up front, Drew. Then the next 2 years he's going to make close to 10. Is there any way he doesn't hold out after year one?
No, he's going to.
So essentially you paid a guy $20 million on a prove-it deal.
Yeah, and everyone can pretty much say he's already proved it.
And he has. He's been good. He definitely had a dip in the middle of his career in Tennessee. Great all-pro level rookie year. Outside of that, he had that dip when he got hurt in the playoffs, actually, against the Chiefs, ironically. And then kind of resurged this year.
Is this Cleveland saying they're that one piece away from being a playoff team? They're like, we're willing to spend this because we're so good everywhere else in our own minds, like our our receivers, our running backs, we're good at quarterback. Like, is this just saying we're willing to spend that money to just push ourselves over into the playoffs?
I actually think it's something different. I think Cleveland's saying, look, we have to protect Baker Mayfield regardless. Like, we're in desperation mode to try to develop him because, again, another year goes by where he struggles a lot. There's going to be some questions starting to ask about Mayfield, like, hey, you have all these weapons. Sam Darnold hasn't had any of that. Even up till this point, Josh Allen hasn't had the kind of weapons that you've had, and you're still underachieving. I think more than anything, this was we struggle to protect him. We got to do anything we can to bring in Jack Conklin.
Paper champions. This was last year's paper champions. This is the team that everyone said, careful, they could go into the playoffs. A lot of people said it. People
were calling it Super Bowl, if you remember.
And they were saying Super Bowl on top of that. So a lot of that is kind of in them. And they're like, what was our biggest issue? We couldn't keep Baker Mayfield upright. We're going to go out and get the biggest free agent lineman that we possibly can, and we don't care if we spend a fortune on it because this is the piece that we're missing to get us over the hedge and get us in the playoffs and get us a chance to win a Super Bowl.
And Cody says we can just give Cleveland the Cleveland grade. A lot of stuff looks good until the season starts. Here's the thing. Again, if they hadn't signed Stefanski as their head coach, I would be like, do you really need Austin Hooper? Did you need to pay him that much money when you already have David Njoku, who I know got hurt, but still has been a very outstanding player when on the field? Do you need to get that second tight end? He runs so much two tight end sets. This, to me, is the match made in heaven. I think Cleveland actually made some good moves outside of the contracts. I think Jack Conklin, like I said, after year one, he's holding out. They're going to have to pay him close to that $20 million a year. It's really going to cripple the team eventually when it happens. But for now, I think this move, for 1 year at the very least, helps Cleveland get better. That's why I give him a C+. Now, losing Schobert, I don't like it. But again, with what he was paid, when you talk about the 5-year, $53 million to leave for Jacksonville, I don't mind moving on from a player even as young as Schobert is because he hasn't started as much as he has. He hasn't played as much as you'd like to see for a guy getting a $53 million contract. Even Kirksey, he's had some injuries. It's okay to move on from him. It's just a lot of turnover at linebacker. So I give Cleveland the big C, except I put a plus next to it, because I do like what they tried to do, but there's still a lot of problems with this, and Cody might be right, where we're at a situation next year where we're looking at Cleveland like, man, that fell apart fast, didn't it?
Yep, my C-, man. I don't like the depleting of their linebacking core. Kirksey and Schobert are great linebackers. They're going to do great with the two teams they went to.
If I can talk about Billings really quick before we move on, I do like him. He's going to shore up the middle of that. He'll be a very good one-technique tackle for them. He was great in division for the Bengals and was basically the only part of that team that was any good, which is their defensive line. So Yeah, I like bringing in Andrew Billings. Again, not enough to change the grade, but I do like that he's going in there. Let's talk about the Bengals next, because this team, again, just throwing cash around, Drew. It's always the bottom tier teams. They always have the money to spend. We'll go through some of these high dollar signings, and I really want to get your opinion on some of them. DJ Reader coming in from Houston on a 4-year, $53 million deal. I wonder if that's too much money for an interior guy like Reader, who has been great. No argument there, but should you be spending money when you have so many needs on a defensive tackle? That's one of my questions. We'll move on and talk about Trey Waynes as well, coming in for a 3-year, $42 million deal from the Vikings. Von Bell from the Saints, 3 years, $18 million. Xavier Suafilo coming in from the Cowboys. Decent guard, hasn't played a lot yet, but been a very good pass protector. Outside of that, we have Mackenzie Alexander, another Vikings cornerback on his way into Cincinnati. Then you talk about the losses, Drew. Tyler Eifert, Clayton Fralem, Andrew Billings, obviously on his way up to Cleveland, and then Darquez Dennard. A lot of turnover for a team like Cincinnati, but that's not always a bad thing, right?
Yeah. These names aren't going to sit there and go, wow, yeah, I know you got Reader. I think he's a good player. If you kind of remember Cincinnati when they were kind of in their prime going to the playoffs a whole bunch, they had a great defensive line. Maybe Reader is that guy to start it back all over. Trey Waynes, a little overpriced. I still like him, but, to get a good corner in this league, sometimes you got to pay for it. Alexander, I also like the combination of those two coming. I think that's a great addition. Bell, I look at him as just slightly below average safety in this league. I don't know if you're high on Bell or not.
He's a great hitter, great strong safety, but again, when you're paying a guy $6 million a year, I'd like less of a problem in pass coverage, because he's basically a linebacker you're going to put back there to play next to a free safety over the top that's going to come up towards the line and try to make plays on the running back. He's a liability in the pass game. No argument here from that.
This is a team completely in rebuild mode. They're looking at their future in Joe Burrow. They're going to focus on this draft. They're going to sign some of these guys to keep their team relevant until the next couple of years to try to make a big push in the playoffs. Problem is, they're in a tough division. Unless Joe Burrow comes in here and is the next Peyton Manning or Tom Brady, this team is going to be not very good for the next couple of years.
I think it's very likely as well. One thing I will say is Trey Waynes, again, a guy that's been okay for Cincinnati or for Minnesota. I think coming into Cincinnati, 3 years, 42 is a lot of money. DJ Reader, again, I think he's a great player. I think he's fantastic, and I know they had the money to spend. You probably have to overspend if you're Cincinnati to bring free agents in, because you look at you look at the shape of the team. I don't really see them very attractive. The city isn't exactly supremely attractive to a lot of guys. I think when you're talking about him, though, 4 years, $53 million, it's a good start, and it shores up what's already a strength for them. But, again, you probably could have chased somebody else with that kind of money. This could have been it could have been a cornerback that they need so desperately. It could have been a safety. They could have gone other directions, I think, instead of DJ Reader. Like the landing, like the player, maybe not the money so much.
We will know. We won't be doing Tampa today. We're doing the AFC free agents.
We are going to do the NFC on Thursday.
Correct. And I saw your other comment before. He says he does not want Tom Brady as quarterback. I get used to it, man. Just get used to it.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, you have a choice. He's either your quarterback or you got to pick another team. And look, everybody can weather those storms, right? But this is a weird, not to get off track here, Drew, weird, little bit of a weird kind of conundrum. You're talking about a guy who's won 6 Super Bowls, forcing people away from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as fans?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Definitely a topic I'd like to go into.
When Joe Montana became a Kansas City Chief, we were ecstatic as Chiefs fans. Of course, I mean, well, I was going to say, of course, we haven't had very much luck, but I guess neither of the Bucks either. So,
hey, both those teams have won Super Bowls. Maybe not.
True.
Maybe not Tampa in a while, but still. All right, final grade for Cincinnati. Just to remind everybody, what did you give them?
I did not. I'm going to give him a D plus. I'm not too big on it.
I'm going to give a C plus. I thought I was too hard on these guys, but Drew, you brought the guillotine out for this one. You take it.
I'm digging deep.
I'm going C plus. I like DJ Reader coming in. Again, Trey Waynes may play better. I like Von Bell enough that he has value. Again, you paid him a lot of money. He still has value. We'll see. I'm not so crazy about the corners they brought in. I'm going to go C plus. They didn't lose a whole lot. They brought in, I think they're a better team after free agency than they were going into it, so I'll say slightly above average. Can't give them any better than that, unfortunately.
And my last thing to this is, why have you not traded Andy Dalton? Go get draft picks.
Why did you franchise A.J. Green? It's another one.
Well,
I like AJ Green, but why is he not on the trade block?
The rumor, if you believe it, is Joe Burrow asked him to if you're going to take me.
And if you're Joe Burrow, you're probably looking at it like, man, get me any weapon you can to try for me to throw to. Anything. Although Andy Dalton made use of a lot of guys that may not be household names there.
True.
Let's talk about the Bills next. We'll move east, Drew, and talk about Mario Addison, a 32-and-a-half-year-old who's going to be 33 going into next year, getting a 3-year, $30 million deal. Now, he had 11 sacks, but again, I'm kind of worried about this being the premier signing. We can't talk about Stephon Diggs. They did trade for him. I wouldn't call that a signing, but the rest of these guys, I go down the list, guys like A.J. Klein and Vernon Butler, Quentin Jefferson, Josh Norman, Tyler Matakevich, they've brought in a bunch of guys that are going to be part of a platoon, I think, to make this team even better than what we saw last year.
I noticed you didn't say Quentin Spain. Do you not?
He's departing. He's departing. I didn't talk about the departures. Let's talk about really quick.
He re-signed for a 3-year.
Oh, I hadn't even seen that, so must have just happened.
No. Yep, signed 3-year, $15 million contract.
Well, I don't know that I would have gone that high, but again, it's important to keep your players. Consistency is important on the offensive line. I like that. Maybe not at $15 million, but I like that. They, as far as losses go, they lost Jordan Phillips, they lost Shaq Lawson, and they lost Kevin Johnson off to Cleveland. I think, again, none of those players have really deserved massive contracts and the money they've got, so I think letting them go actually helps them out a lot. You could say Phillips was probably worth it, that 3-year, $30 million deal that Arizona gave him, but again, last year was not his best year, and he hasn't been the guy that's really stood out for them. They haven't lost a lot, Drew, but the guys they're bringing in, this is almost like last year where we saw them bring in 6 offensive linemen. They're like, we're just going to throw a bunch of shit against the wall, and some of it's going to stick.
Nathan, no, we have not done the Colts, man, just to let you know. Yeah, it kind of seems like they have. And I think Shaq Lawson's a big loss. I think he's a very underrated player. I think that's pretty huge for losing him. And I know you're saying, you're not bringing in Stephon Diggs, but bringing him in, this is what Buffalo has wanted forever now. They get a number 1 receiver, and they finally got it. The question is, does he fit in with the system with Josh Allen throwing the ball? Does Josh Allen make the best out of Stephon Diggs? And that's honestly the question. I'm going to grade it low, but if this works out and he becomes a number 1 wide receiver and he makes Josh Allen look better than what he is, I could give this an A- because that was the biggest move. That was what they wanted, and now they got one. Now can they utilize it? Until that happens, I'm looking at a C- here. I agree with you. I don't really like the losses. I think Shaq Lawson's huge. The re-signing Quentin Spain's good, like you said, keeping the camaraderie together. The chemistry works out in that offensive line. They definitely changed that last year. This is a playoff team. And going into playoffs, you lose some players. The question is, does Addison and all these other players add for what they lost?
I'm not crazy about the Addison thing. Anytime you're giving a 3-year deal to a 33-year-old, I think it's trouble, especially in today's NFL. There's a chance he lives out to it. He had 11 sacks, but again, if you look at a lot of the deeper analytics, he wasn't necessarily the best pass rushing end. He was just somewhere close to average, and those sacks kind of fell into his lap, and somebody's got to get him, basically. I will say this about the rest of the team. Paying guys like A.J. Klein, paying guys like Quentin Jefferson and Josh Norman, they're taking a lot of shots. These are guys that they believe could be good in their system, and then if they're not, we're just going to wad them up and throw them out, and it'll be okay. I like those low-dollar kind of gambles that you can take in free agency, and I feel like that's what Buffalo has done a lot. So my grade for them is going to be a B-. They've taken a lot of gambles, and when you're a playoff team that, let's face it, Drew, when you talk about them, the fact that they couldn't beat a team like Houston that was struggling as much as it was in that game, and then you look at them against the Chiefs where outside of that first quarter were basically just totally dominated, you still have to look at it like the Bills are a long way away from winning a Super Bowl. Period. I think bringing in a bunch of gambles like this is absolutely okay for a team that is still this far away from beating teams like the Ravens probably, the Chiefs, the Patriots probably, or at least the Patriots as they were. They're still a long way away from beating those teams. It's okay to roll the dice still. I'm going to be a little bit higher on you. I'm going to say B- here.
That's my fault for leaving out Josh Norman. I actually like that signing a lot. I don't think it changes anything about how I feel about it. Nathan says the Bills get a B+, and Cody said Jefferson doesn't make sense to him. He was only a backup in Seattle. The success seemed to be tied with the other D-line play versus his talent.
You could argue that, but you could also argue that, hey, Buffalo has a lot of, even though they're not major names, they have a lot of workmen on this defense. He's going to fit right in as another one of those workman type of guys where, does he flash and does he make the defense run through himself? No, but when you put him on part of a very good group, he can make a lot of things happen. That's why I like the signing for Quentin Jefferson. Again, it was cheap enough that it's okay to take this kind of gamble if you're Buffalo. And that is, to me, why one of the things that helped push it up into a B- instead of a C. Stephon Diggs is another big one, but he comes with a lot of risk. People don't want to acknowledge this. There were a lot of games last year where he was just out of play, where the teams took him away and he was gone. Whether it was his attitude, he wasn't playing hard enough, teams found a way to just game plan him out of it. I like bringing in as dynamic of a player as he is. But true, you can't tell me that Stephon Diggs is as dominant as a guy like DeAndre Hopkins. They should have traded all those picks to Houston and brought in Hopkins instead. I like this move. They got better. No argument here. And when you're trading that first-round pick away, I'm 100% cool with that because if you get a guy like Stephon Diggs out of the first round, you're calling yourself lucky and that you didn't get a bust. But for what you gave up and what you could have had if you would have talked to Houston and realized that Hopkins was on the trade block, I just feel like they could have done a little bit better.
Yeah, maybe they didn't want Hopkins in the AFC. I mean, there's a good possibility that's the issue as well. Maybe they didn't want to trade him off to a playoff team. They wanted to bring him in like the Cardinals where they're not.
But can I counter that a little bit? They gave up a first, a third, a fifth, and a seventh, I believe, for Stephon Diggs. And got a second.
Don't get me wrong.
There comes a point in time where you just have to take the assets.
But you got to understand, Bill O'Brien was upset. He might have not have wanted to care about that stuff. He's like, I'm going to make DeAndre Hopkins wish he never gave me attitude. And here you go, you're off to the Cardinals.
And then he's going to make them good, and all that's out the window, right?
Hey, I'm right there with you on that.
We've had people ask me. I've had people ask me, does this make them a playoff team? That's how much respect they have for DeAndre Hopkins.
I'm the one grading this Bills team at a C- because I don't think what they're doing helps them any further than what they got last year. And that's where I'm going to flip it and say if Diggs works out, this is an A-, maybe an A+, because this is what they've been wanting. Got to remember they went after Antonio Brown. They went out and drafted Kelvin Benjamin, and I get these are other coaches, but the same ownership is still there. They've been wanting this number one receiver in Buffalo. Now they got him. Question is, can they make it pan out? That's it. Does it pan out? They live and die by that trade.
Cass, good to see you, man. We are still working our way through the AFC East. You did miss the AFC North, which will be on repeat if you need to see it. We're going to do the entire AFC grades today. We're going to do the NFC grades on Thursday, so we're glad you're here with us. Nathan says the Cards got robbed. I'm not sure if he kind of just mistyped a little bit, and I think he meant to say that the Cards did the mugging in this situation, and they just stole the Texans' lunch. I mean, true. We've talked about it a little bit in the past, but man, just wait till you see my grade for Houston. That's all I can say. We'll get there. Let's talk about the Patriots next, if you're ready. A team that, again, just hemorrhaging talent. When you talk about guys like Tom Brady, Kyle Van Noy, Jamie Collins, Danny Shelton, even Ted Caracas or whatever, their center on their way out of town, Drew. And then they bring in Bo Allen for a $7 million deal across 2 years. Adrian Phillips, 2 years, $6 million. Demary Byrd, wide receiver from Arizona, on a 1 year, $1 million deal. It's got to be an F, right? Anytime you lose a 6-time Super Bowl winning quarterback, it's an F.
I'm going to give them a D- because they got Devin McCourty to sign a 2-year deal with them. Even though he's getting old, I still like him at safety. He was one of the big reasons why that secondary was so good in New England. I like that, but a D-, man. If they didn't sign him, it's an F. It's an F 100%.
It's just a solid F for me. Too much talent's departing. I think this is going to be one of the biggest walkbacks we've seen. The Patriots are going to come back down to earth finally after this 20-year dynasty they've had with Tom Brady. I think even more than him. Even more than him, Jamie Collins leaving, he's been very effective in the Patriots uniform. Not so much outside of it, but for them, losing a guy like that is going to hurt. Kyle Van Noy's been very good for them. Danny Shelton is going to hurt them on the interior up front, and then losing a center like Caracas, even though he's not a high-dollar guy leaving, it's just more uncertainty in that offensive line that's churned so many guys here lately. I know the Patriots are always fine, right? That's been the thing with the Patriots. It doesn't matter who we lose. We always find a way to make it work.
Right.
I think this is the year it finally comes back to bite him in the ass.
Where do you grade him if they sign Cam Newton?
Still an F. Still too much talent leaving. Even with, especially Tom Brady, you're still getting worse at quarterback, in my opinion. And even beyond that, Cam Newton comes into town. How much is fixed? You went from, 11 wins last year, 12?
Now Belichick at the helm. He's got a quarterback that was a former NFL MVP. I don't know, man. I mean,
they're getting older in the secondary. The defense is losing talent. Let's face it, Drew. The defense was the team last year. Even with Tom Brady, the defense was the team. They don't have any weapons. Their offensive line is starting to regress. They can't run the ball as well as they did in years past. The defense now is falling apart. It's an F for me, regardless. There's no saving it. I mean, they could draft well, and maybe they bounce back, or maybe Nate Stidham is Peyton Manning or Tom Brady 2.0, and we're just like, man, they didn't miss a beat. Outside of that, I just don't see it. I can't see a way back for him.
No, if they sign Cam Newton, it moves up. It's got to move up. Cam Newton coming in there, it's night and day difference between Brian Hoyer and Cam Newton. Come on, man. It's a 9 day difference.
Well, I'm not saying they're not getting better, but it's still an F for me. Like, yeah, sure. They're getting better, but it's still an F because you've lost so much talent. Even if you take Tom Brady out of it, guys like Kyle Van Noy and Jamie Collins don't come around all the time. I know they have this mentality of we will always find the next guy to step up in the system. I just think eventually you hit the wall and you just get somebody who's not as good. We saw it happen at receiver this year, and I think later on we're going to see it happen on the defensive side of the ball too. I'm going to read a couple of these comments here because we did have a few of them. Cody goes on to say all NFC West teams make the playoffs. It's now possible. And let me say this. I don't think Arizona's going to be there even with Hopkins coming in. I think they're going to be a little bit short. They got to get that defense a little bit better. But I think for the first time, we're going to see them much closer to being a playoff team for the past few years even. I think they're going to be a scary team to play against. They're going to win probably 7 or 8 games in my opinion.
Yeah. This is not going to happen. Not all 4 NFC West teams are going to make the playoffs. It's not going to happen. I think the North is going to have a lot to say about that. There's no way. Not all 4.
Tampa Bay and the Saints in the South, I think both of them will probably have a good chance of making it. Cody says, where did Danny Shelton go to? He actually hasn't signed. He's still a free agent. Cody goes on to say, is Tom Brady leaving going to be as big of a loss as Cleveland losing LeBron? No, because Boston's title town. They still have a bunch of other sports that are good. Cleveland only had the Cavaliers. I mean, the Indians, I know they went to a World Series, fell apart. It's a team that will make like one run every 15 years. The Browns have been perennially bad. You had the Cavs, basically. Losing LeBron James was as big of a nut punch as I've ever seen in sports. I don't think anything will be as bad for a city as losing LeBron James was for Cleveland. Maybe OKC when they lost like the big 3 in Durant, Harden, and Westbrook eventually. But I don't know, Drew. I don't have a good comparison to that. Losing LeBron, I think, is still worse for Cleveland because Oklahoma City only had the Thunder, so you only have one disappointment. Cleveland has like 8 disappointments in sports.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot you could compare to that. Cody says Cam Newton Cam's a sham. The wind starts blowing in Foxborough. The interceptions are going to come in droves. Man, no faith in Cam Newton.
He's not known for his accuracy. I know he didn't have great weapons in Carolina, but I think he might even be taking a step back. I mean, what happens when Edelman hits the wall? What's that receiving group look like? Mohamed Sanu isn't a spring chicken. He's, 31 or 32 himself. They've got a couple of old guys that are basically hanging on by their fingernails and not really any prospects underneath that. They lost Philip Dorsett, Drew. I didn't mention him because he's not important, but they lost Philip Dorsett. The end is nigh for the Patriots, right?
We'll see, man. Every time you put your money against the Patriots, they seem to always pan out. So
that's true.
This will be their biggest leap forward if they can pass losing Tom Brady.
And just like always, they have 11 draft picks again. So just wait.
This has been planned out. Belichick is not an idiot. We all know this. This has been planned out. Even if this 1 year goes down the drain, watch him bounce back the year after. Regardless how good Tom Brady was, Belichick is still one of the best coaches ever in the NFL. Plain and simple.
Absolutely. And Cody says the best part of the Patriots is always their easy schedule. Does that get tougher now? I mean, we're talking about Miami getting tougher. They basically bought a team, or we will here in just a second. We're going to talk about the Bills getting much better. They pushed the Patriots last season. Even the Jets, I got to say, they're trying to make improvements, and they're shuffling things around. Is the AFC East finally getting up off the mat from under the Patriots?
I mean, this has got to be their year to do it, right? I mean, this has to be it.
If it doesn't happen now, just don't even play any games in the AFC East. They just lose to the Patriots every year.
How much do you believe in Sam Darnold? How much do you believe in Josh Allen? Are those guys the future of their teams?
Darnold more than Allen, yes, but I think Josh
really
Allen will be with the Bills for a long time too.
We don't really know what's going to happen in Miami. I mean, it looks like they should be going after Tua, but you never know. I don't see it. I don't see the heir apparent next to these guys' quarterback play for these teams. I just don't see it, man. I know you're a big Sam Darnold fan. To be honest, if I was going to pick one right now, I'd actually pick Josh Allen because he brought his team to the playoffs. Sam Darnold's done nothing.
All I'm saying, well, hold on. I know we're like I said, we're derailed. We're off topic like we always get, but let me say this. Sam Darnold, when you compare what the Jets have done to put around him compared to what the Bills have done for Josh Allen, it's night and day. I know Josh Allen doesn't have the receivers yet, and they've tried to correct that this offseason by trading for a guy like Stephon Diggs. Sam Darnold's had Robbie Anderson and a bad offensive line. And they signed, Le'Veon Bell, that's great, and he's 2.8 yards a carry. So we talk about what they've done, especially defensively. Let's talk about defensively. The Bills have been an elite defense for years. We don't talk about them because they're not always top 2 or top 3, but they've been top 10 for a string of years now, 3, 4, 5, 6 years that they've done a great job of at least playing on one side of the ball. They've done so much more to help Josh Allen than the Jets have done to help Sam Darnold.
Guys, now we've learned, don't talk bad
Don't talk back about our man, Drew. Don't talk about my man. Now, Nathan's going Patriots 8-8. Do you like that? Do they get to 8 wins? Is that crazy to say?
I don't know who their quarterbacks are. Their quarterback's going to be. I don't know who it is. If it's Brian Hoyer, it's less than 6.
Well, we said that, but didn't he give Cleveland like an 8 or a 9 win season? I think it was.
Yeah, that's different.
Well, no, he won like 4 games and then got hurt. That's what it was. Never mind. Scratch that. Yep, 6 wins. I think 8's pretty optimistic for the Patriots when we talk about all the defensive talent leaving.
He's not.
Maybe
he's not the quarterback.
Maybe Jared Stidham's just ready. I always call him Nate. I don't know why. Maybe Jared Stidham's just ready, and he's the guy that Jimmy Garoppolo could have been before he left for the 49ers, but I don't think that's very likely. I think very likely what's going to happen is the Patriots win 4 or 5 games with the run game and with their defense this year. They'll have a lot of draft picks, and then they'll trade up and try to get the best. It'll be Justin Fields. It'll be Trevor Lawrence. They're going to bring in a top-level quarterback, and then it's going to be business as usual with Belichick. And, God, I hope that's not the case. But it absolutely could be. The Patriots could refire the dynasty by drafting the right quarterback here in a year or two.
Moving on to the Jets?
Yes, I will read a couple of these really quick. Cody says he thinks the Jets have had the most underrated offseason so far. I'm prefacing it here with this. He's upgraded where they've needed and didn't chase top free agents, and can upgrade skill positions in the draft.
So that being said, they focused on their offensive line.
They did. Let me read you some names here. George Fant coming out of Seattle on a 3-year, $30 million deal. Connor McGovern from Denver, 3 years, $27 million. They brought in Greg Van Roten for a guard from Carolina. They have brought a couple other guys in when we talk about like Brashad Perriman. They brought in Pierre Desir, which I liked coming out of Indianapolis. I know he had a massively down year for Indy, and they kind of said, we'll do better than you. But I like bringing in a guy like that that's on a prove-it deal the way they gave it they gave it to him like the day after he was cut. The Jets, to me, not a lot of losses. I mean, they lost Brandon Shell, offensive tackle, but we both agree the offensive line needed to get better, right, Drew?
Oh, absolutely. I think their biggest addition is McGovern. I honestly think that they needed a center. It's a reason why they went out and got that. Oh man, what's Carolina's Carolina's old center?
Khalil.
Khalil. There you go. There's a reason they went after him when he retired. They went and chased him, asked him to come back, gave him big money. Having McGovern, that changes that whole entire offensive line. I think you get a centerpiece right there in the middle of your offensive line, and you can start turning yourself around. The question is this Bills last year's offseason 2.0? Does this change your offensive line, bringing in 5, 6 players?
You stole my thunder.
Different.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the question. Does that fix it?
I think they are copying off the Bills' notes. They looked at the Bills and the way they turned their offensive line around by the approach of we're just going to sign a bunch of guys, and some of them will be good and some of them won't, and then we'll kind of address it. I think the money's a little bit higher than I would have liked to see. Connor McGovern, I think, is the only guy that's actually proven the fact that he deserves this kind of money. Fant, for me, especially in Seattle there, he was somewhere around par or maybe even below par. The only reason he got that money is because he's a tackle, and I think the Jets, they were kind of in desperation mode. They're like, we have to do better on the offensive line. So we'll overpay for a guy that probably doesn't deserve it because we need better play than what we've had. I'm not crazy about him coming in. I do like Greg Van Roten on the 3-year, $10 million deal. I always love bringing in veterans for super cheap deals like that where they're not punishing on the team to get rid of them. I even like Rashad Perriman coming in, even though I would have liked him I would like to see him keep Robbie Anderson for the extra $2 million. The Jets are a hard team for me to grade, man. I'm going to give them B-. When I look at this team, again, they've gotten a little bit better. They've done things to protect Sam Darnold. They know where the problem is. I just don't know that's enough. I understand exactly where Cody was coming from, where he said he liked that they didn't go out and break the wallet, because how many times do we declare a team a winner in free agency, and then they go out and get to the regular season and we're like, well, 6 wins. I like that. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just saying, I give them a C+. You're right. They focused on what they needed to, and that's the offensive line. The question is, are these the right pieces? That's it.
A lot of that kind of points to no, but they did free themselves up to go and address the position that I've said that the Jets have needed for years, which is wide receiver. I think that's going to be their first pick. It may be still an offensive tackle, and they're like, we're just fixing the O-line. We're going to build an identity through the run, try to work on this defense. I just don't really see it with Adam Gase as head coach. I mean, he's such an offensive, quote-unquote, guru, where I think people kind of respect what he can do. I think they're going to try to go a little bit higher flying with Adam Gase, and they're going to try to bring in some more weapons. There's a good chance they could trade up and get someone like Jerry Jeudy, or maybe even he falls to them at that point.
Is it time to strip Adam Gase of the guru title? I think it's time. He's an offensive-minded coach.
Well, let me say this. I still think you can call him the guru. I think he's just unlike Bill. I mean, you got to remember, in Miami, they basically gave him the Bill O'Brien rule, where you tell us who you want and we'll get him. And we'll draft him. Like, no pushback. We don't really have a general manager that's got enough of a backbone to tell you can't have what you want, or that you could be better served by bringing other guys in. I think the biggest thing with Adam Gase, he's not a GM. He does not know how to solve it. And they signed Le'Veon Bell before he even got to New York last year. Like, that deal was already done before he got there. So I don't know that all of that is Adam Gase's fault, but he's running out of guru rope, if you will. We can't call him that forever. I got to start seeing a little bit more.
Adam says, do you think the Chiefs will make it back to the Super Bowl, back-to-back Super Bowls? Adam, yes, I do. I'm a big Chiefs fan, and I fully believe that they can make another run at it.
Well, let me say this. I think the Ravens will beat the Chiefs because they won't have the Titans to do their dirty work for them this year. So, sorry for them. Do I think they can? I think they have a great chance of making it back. Anytime you have a great quarterback like Mahomes, you have a chance of making it back. All jokes aside.
We beat the best team in the NFL in the
AFC Bowl, Championship. Yeah, I know. Bummer. It's just, you can't always have what you want. No, I think the Chiefs have a great chance of making it. You look at how weak the AFC is. Tom Brady's now headed to the NFC as well. Roethlisberger's only getting older. The Titans are just depleting weapons. Outside of the Ravens, this might be a 2-horse race, Drew. I don't want to get too far off topic, but again, this could be a 2-horse race where it's Ravens and Chiefs. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. I mean, Indianapolis is getting better. Houston's still in the running. I think the AFC West is getting a little bit tougher on the Chiefs. Hopefully they don't take too many injuries, but they have their own question marks. I mean, this is the first year Mahomes has missed some time with injury, I believe. They've had, when you talk about the Raiders getting better, their division, I think Denver got better. We'll talk about those two teams here in a minute. I think their division, for the most part, is getting better, too, so they won't have quite as easy of a road as they've had. But still, you have to call them the favorite. I think everyone has to call them the favorite for now.
Nathan says, anyone surprised that Clowney and Cam, I think he meant Clowney is still a free agent. Ivy wants to know what team is going to pick up Clowney.
I think it's still, if you listen to the reports, it's still dollar value and it's still years for Clowney. Again, he's 27. He's going to be going on 28 if I'm correct. And the problem, I think, with what I've heard is not necessarily a team that won't pay him $20 million. It's more along the lines of nobody wants to give him the $20 million across 5 years or 6 years. Clowney wants a monster contract because he knows there's not a very good chance of him getting a second one. At this age, you're probably going to hit that 30 number, which is always the big turnoff for NFL teams before your contract comes up, and then you're not going to get paid again. Who do I think will get him? I like to believe the Titans are in the running, and not just because they're my team, but because they're top 5 in cap salary space. They just traded a premier player in Jarrell Casey away to clear that space to make this happen. I have to believe they had a plan in mind when they did that, especially because they had the money to go into next year with Casey. When I look at this, I said the Titans are a major factor. I'd say the Jets are still in the running. The Giants should be considering it. There are a couple other teams that I think are in there. Seattle supposedly offered him $18.5, and that deal hasn't worked yet. But supposedly Seattle's leading the way at $18.5 million. But it might be after the draft, which is crazy when you talk about a top-level free agent like Clowney is. But for a guy that's never had a 10-sack-a-year season, you got to kind of pump the brakes and say, am I getting my money's worth if I go and give this guy one of the top defensive end contracts in football? Or outside linebacker, whatever you want to call it, edge rusher.
All right, now I'll answer this one. He said Cam Newton as well. To be honest with you, I think it's the coronavirus, man. It's the fact they're not going to be able to put hands and eyes on him and see him and physically and put him through a workout. I think that's the biggest issue right now, and I think that's the reason why Cam Newton's sitting on the sideline before he signs with the team. Until people can actually see if this guy's healthy. You got to remember, this is 2 years in a row he's been banged up. They want to see him throw. They want to see him break on his foot. This is going to be an issue until they can finally get healthy or someone gets really injured somehow and they need a quarterback desperately. They sign Cam. Cam might be a free agent until after the draft.
I'll say even into training camp. I think he's looking to start, and you're just out of spots, right? You look around the NFL, who needs a quarterback specifically? You have the Patriots right now, and that's about it, right? I mean, everybody else is highly poised to go trade or to go draft their guy, like the Bengals and the Dolphins and the Chargers. They're all likely to get the big 3 out of this draft, which is Herbert, Burrow, and Tua, not in that order. But those are the big 3. They're going to go get their guys. Everyone's saying Cam should fit in for the Chargers, but they already have Tyrod Taylor. Why am I going to go spend big money to bring in Cam Newton when I already have a similar talent, maybe not as much in Tyrod Taylor, but I have a similar talent in Taylor, and I'm going to draft a guy anyway? I just don't see the spot being there for Cam Newton. That's why he's a free agent, because there's not a good spot for him, and that's why James Woods is out there too. Because
Cam Newton puts people in the stadium, and that is huge for the Chargers.
But so will a rookie.
Their own stadium with their own fans. That's the issue, man. Plain and simple. But Cam will fill the stadium with people that are excited, especially for someone like the Chargers, where they've had Philip Rivers for years.
Right.
And I get Cam's a little bit older, but they're going to bring someone in like that. Philip Rivers never an MVP of the league. Let's not forget that. Cam has been. Cam has brought his team to a Super Bowl.
Philip Rivers but let me stop you right there, because that's ridiculous. Let's talk about who's had the better. It is ridiculous because, yes, if you talk about one outlier year. No, let me finish. When you're talking about one outlier season, yes, Cam has that. But who has been more consistent across a career? Philip Rivers, period. There's no in between. Philip Rivers has been the better quarterback year in and year out than Cam Newton has, unless you take out, 2016, where he had his outlier year where he had the MVP season.
That's not the debate.
And you can sell tickets, sure, with Cam Newton. But how long is Cam Newton going to start when you go and draft Justin Herbert at 6? Or you trade up and you go steal Tua from the Dolphins?
Who says they're not going to?
They are going to. That's exactly what I'm saying. They are going to. And then Cam Newton will never see the field. That's why the spot doesn't make sense.
Well, that's not who I'm going for, but it makes sense. They're going to put tickets in there, and they're going to put tickets of their own fans in that stadium. I already said he's going to the Patriots. That's where I'm going to put him in it. But the Chargers sit there and say that they're not worth bringing in. It's not worth bringing in Cam. That's crazy. You're not selling tickets. If you pick a quarterback
at 5 or 6, you're not signing Cam Newton because he's not going to do anything for you. Period. And they're going to, right?
1 or 2 year deal, and you bring him in there, and he plays until he breaks down, loses 4 games in a row, or whatever, until you bring in your young rookie. Yeah, that's exactly what you do.
Nope,
that's exactly what you do.
You don't sit people. Not today. Not in today's NFL. No GM is going to have the patience from his ownership to say, I'm drafting this guy at 5. I'm drafting this guy, or I should say 6. And we're going to sit him for a year and a half or 2 years to use a 30-year-old quarterback that hasn't won a Super Bowl.
Patrick Mahomes, Trubisky, all sat behind. I'm pretty sure I'm leaving out other guys. Yeah, it's still happening in today's football.
Patrick Mahomes happened with an established guy, with a guy that was already tearing up the NFL in Alex Smith, especially when you look at the shape the Chiefs were in when that happened. Mitch Trubisky sat behind Mike Glennon for like 5 minutes. Okay.
Cody says, who wants to pay Cam's top 10 salary? Guess what? Cam's in a new reality. It's not guaranteed he's going to get a top 10 salary. He might want that, but he's not getting it. Every guy in the NFL wants to be the highest paid player in the NFL in their position. Everybody. But then reality hits him. Cam is not a top 10 quarterback in this league.
Nathan says, damn. Nathan says he didn't want to start a war. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Drew. But he thinks the Pats get him too. It makes the most sense. They're the team that needs a quarterback. Him, but you could say the same thing about Jameis Winston. And the reason I say that...
No one wants that trash.
I would take Jameis Winston before I took Cam Newton if I'm the Patriots, and here's why. Because I think Jameis Winston, even with bad receivers like Rashad Perriman last year, and yes, sorry, Jets fans, he's not a good wide receiver. Even with bad receivers, he found a way to make them look good. And guess what the Patriots have right now? A lot of guys that need someone who's going to make them look good. I don't know that Cam Newton makes his receivers look better, and they already have a running game. I don't see the Patriots changing what they do. I think they'll go and take the passer and say, Bill Belichick is one of the best defensive minds in football. We can get over the mistakes. Maybe we can teach Jameis to cut that number down. Maybe we can't, but even still, we can win games if we can put up some points with the way our defense plays. That's why I think Winston's a better fit for the Patriots even. Even now, I think Winston's a better fit than Cam Newton is. Does that happen? I don't know, because I could see them going Cam Newton instead. And I'm not saying Cam Newton's a better player or worse player than Winston. I just think he's a better fit for the Patriots. All right. Are we done yelling at each other? We ready to get back on track?
I mean, you're wrong, but it's okay.
Okay, yeah, the Chargers. That's fine. Agree to disagree. I think we'll just take a fan vote here. Let me tally the votes. Yeah, I was right. Okay, cool, perfect. Let's talk about the Dolphins.
The Patriots. I said the Patriots.
Let's talk about the Dolphins, and let's talk about how they're buying a defense. Brace yourself. I'm going to read. Let me go through the entire list. And these are all additions, mind you. Byron Jones, Kyle Van Noy, Shaq Lawson, Eric Flowers, Emmanuel Ogbah, Jordan Howard, Clayton Freelem, Ted Karras from the Patriots. Drew, before we even hit guys that departed, they had 8 of their new salaries coming in that were higher than the guys leaving. They're buying a team. Does that work in today's NFL?
Sometimes.
When
you go from one of the worst teams in the league to the middle, maybe top middle teams, which they could, this is how you do it.
Let me say this, at least. I like all the players coming in. I like Byron Jones. Even though he doesn't get turnovers, I think he's one of the best kind of shutdown corners. I'm worried that this new contract, which is 5 years, $82 million, is a bit excessive, especially when we're talking about Xavier Howard being the second highest paid corner and him also being in your defensive secondary. It's kind of an issue. I think when you talk about both of those guys being back there down the road, money might get a little tight, but they have an advantage. Right now, they are not paying a quarterback, especially when you talk about Ryan Fitzpatrick, who will be coming off the books next year. They're going to draft Tua. I think that's very likely to be what happens. They have the picks to go and move up. The rumor is now that they're trying to trade with the Bengals to go and get Joe Burrow instead. Don't think that happens, but you never know. Crazier things have happened between bad organizations. They bring in Kyle Van Noy, 4 years, $51 million. Tons of money. But he's been worth it when you look at what he's done for New England's defense. Shaq Lawson to gamble at 3 years, $30 million, but they're in a position now that gambling's a good thing. Eric Flowers, I think, is my first kind of bit of contention here. Because he's a guy that when he played guard for the Redskins, he did adequately. He tried his luck at tackle. That was kind of where he was drafted at. Never really had any success. Wasn't very good. Then they moved him to guard at the right side, and he was okay. Giving a guy like that $30 or $10 million a year, bit excessive. I know the line needs to get better. I know they've had some of the worst guard play in football outside of maybe the Bengals. I'm not crazy about Eric Flowers coming in either, Drew. So that when I give him my grade here, I want you to keep that in mind too. That he's really the first guy that I look at and I'm like, this wasn't a move that for the money makes the team better. Emmanuel Ogbah, 2 years, $15 million. I know you as a Chiefs fan probably looked at him and said, I'm glad the Chiefs probably didn't give him $7.5 million a year. Jordan Howard, I like coming in. I like Clayton Freelem. I like Ted Karras here coming in at center. This is a team that on paper, they did great. They bought a bunch of guys that really fit, and especially with Brian Flores being from the Patriots system, should be able to work with these guys. But in the back of my mind, Drew, I'm always looking at this, and I'm saying, every time we see a team come out and try to buy a team in free agency, maybe you have the 1 year kind of success like Jacksonville did, and you could argue the Rams are another one of those one-and-done success stories. I just don't know that long term this pays out across over time. Over time, we're going to see the Dolphins maybe have 1 year where they look really good, and then it all falls apart.
When you talk about buying long-term in free agency, that's usually not the case. But what they are doing with this, they're giving some of these good players who could be great for them or great in other organizations longer than 2 years in each of their contracts. And that's what's important here, because I think they realize that year one with their new quarterback, when they go out and draft him this year, isn't going to push them over on the edge. But they also look at it as year two, year three, when this quarterback has been established and these players are still under contract with this team, as the cap still goes up. This was the right move. So when you ask me, did they buy a better team through free agency, that absolutely is the truth. Yes, they did. Because if this team is the bottom five again, then the head coach is gone. He's gone. I agree with you with the Flowers. That was probably not the move. He's kind of failed everywhere he's gone. Maybe moving him inside might help. But I like every other signing here. I like the Byron Jones. I like having two shutdown corners. When you have plenty of cap space, that's what you do. When you're not paying for a quarterback, you go ahead and buff up that secondary. That's okay.
Well, that's the genius of it, right? I mean, you look at it, all these deals, even Byron Jones at 5 years, by the time your quarterback runs out of his deal, his fifth-year option, because you're drafting him first, you're going to have the money because they're all coming off the books.
Brian Flores and this team is going to be – they're building for the future. And I know a lot of people are going to want it to be right now because Tom Brady's gone. But be warned, this team in Miami, if they can stick with it and they get the right guy at quarterback, this could be a good team. I like this. I like this free agency. I'm going to give it a B+.
I'm also giving it a B+. Again, I like what they've brought in. And again, because the brilliance of this is because they don't have the quarterback yet. All these contracts come off the books before you have to pay the quarterback. Do I love Eric Flowers at $10 million a year? No, but I think we can all agree that the Miami Dolphins need to do better on the offensive line, especially in the interior. So I like bringing him in. I like stealing from the Patriots because it's a division rival, and you've got a coach that comes from that system and knows who these guys are. I like all of that. As far as their losses, Daniel Kilgore leaving, I think he was their best offensive lineman, but he's old. I have no problem cycling him over. Rashad Jones leaving, I think, is more of an issue than people want to point to. That, to me, was a little unnecessary, but if he doesn't fit the attitude, he doesn't fit the rebuild, that's okay to move on from him. I think this is a great free agency for him, although it has the potential to crash and burn. I'm going to give him a B+, because like I said, I love all these players, or the vast majority of them. I just don't necessarily know that bringing in all of them all at once, if it's Madden, it always works out. But real life isn't like Madden, right? It takes time for guys to gel. Some guys never will. We just have to wait and see with the Dolphins. I'm going to give them a B+ because they're trying. They're doing something. And whoever comes in at quarterback, whether it's Tua, whether it's Herbert, whether they get Joe Burrow, I think they're going to be better off, especially when their defense is forcing teams off the field with these signings coming into Miami. Cody, really quick, goes to say that buying a team got the Rams to the Super Bowl. Yes, but now look at them. They're hemorrhaging. They're losing talent. They got one Super Bowl run, missed the playoffs this year. Are they in a better spot they were 2 or 3 years ago? They kind of mortgaged the future, and now it's time to pay the piper. I think the Rams and Jacksonville especially kind of have been the poster child of why you don't want to buy a team in free agency.
Cody Coburn says, the Dolphins buy names, ? Or did they have a scheme in mind to fit these players? He thinks it's the second, then buying a defense works.
The other thing I will say is you'll find a way to make it work if you have the talent and you're a good coach. The best coaches in the NFL mold their systems around the guys they have. And I'll honestly, I don't know enough about Brian Flores and the way he runs his defense and the way he kind of acts as a head coach to know that they'll be able to do that. But again, you have to take that chance. You have to take the chance that he's able to adapt his style to the talent that you're able to put around him. I like what Miami's done here. Are you ready to move on?
I don't know. Do we have another hour in us, man? I gotta eat and go to bed.
Well, really quick, I'll make this easy on you, Drew. Houston, it's an F. Do I need to tell you why?
No.
Yeah,
I agree. It's enough.
Randall Cobb coming in, David Johnson coming in, Eric Murray. We can save it. I don't want to shortchange anybody. We can save it. We still have 2 divisions coming up. Yet again, Drew, we fall short of whatever our expectations are and whatever our hopes are. This is your fault for telling me Cam Newton should be a Charger.
It's your fault for talking so much. Jesus.
I got a lot to say. Got a lot on my mind.
We all can tell. No, that was great, man. I had a great discussion. No feelings were hurt. It is what it is. It's how you guys feel and how I feel, and that's what makes this show and this sport so great.
Absolutely, and I definitely meant to yell at you the whole time, and I know you meant to yell at me, so we'll settle it next time we see it. High noon tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys so much for sticking with us. I guess we're doing the rest of the AFC on Thursday, and we'll punt the NFC until next week. Unless it goes well, we'll see. We're kind of going with a running schedule here. Thank you so much for sticking with us, though. It was a great show. Had a lot of great comments and everything, and again, I'm supposed to be tracking these things, and I'm not, Drew. I'm slacking. This is where I miss you.
Yeah. That's where my expertise is writing down names.
Yeah, exactly. Analysis second, writing down names first. But anyway, special thanks to each and every one of you for sticking with us. Let us know how you feel like your team did, because, again, it's all about the conversation. I know we went in on it on Cam Newton. We went in on it on a couple of these teams, too, as to whether they made good moves or not. But we want to hear from you, because, again, we watch the game, but we know you do, too, and we would really like to hear what you think. We will be back on Thursday. Same time, 7:45 Eastern, 6:45 Central. Maybe tune in like 6:53 because it seems like that's the time we always wind up on. Until then, if you have any any final thoughts here, Drew, now is the time.
Nathan says, boo. Why not longer boo? It's because I have not eaten, and I have a 9 to 5, and I got to get sleep, plain and simple.
Absolutely, and that's absolutely okay. We appreciate you sticking with us. We'll be back on Thursday, guys. Again, my final thoughts are this offseason has been wild. We kind of waited a little bit longer than some others to give some offseason grades, but it's not even done, especially not just because of the coronavirus, but because of everything going on. We've had so many different kind of things play out this offseason that we haven't had. We appreciate you sticking with us. We appreciate everything else. We will be back on Thursday. We hope to catch you then.
Practice social distancing. Let's kill this coronavirus before football starts, guys.
Absolutely. Yeah. We need football in September, okay? Stay away from everyone. Stop breathing. Until then, I am Jake, your bartender. This is Drew. Cheers, guys. We'll see you on Thursday.
See ya.